Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Patrick Flynn, and welcome to this Saturday morning's A Different Perspective. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. We have a absolutely wonderful topic that we are going to cover. But first of all, before we get started, I just would like to say thank you again for all of you guys that send an enormous amount of messages to our offices, to our media, to our YouTube. Everybody, I absolutely love it. Our media team is here right now. Our media team continues to get bigger. And no joke, I love it in the fact that we get to spread a beautiful message across the world. But I also love the fact that these people that are actually behind the camera that you cannot see, that could not be done without them, I just consumed even yesterday by listening to the stories of suffering from you guys actually coming in and telling us all things going on. And we actually get to see the wonderful testimonials. You see that when you see our media, when we actually do a testimony about someone getting pregnant, some health condition go away. But continue to send all of your messages. As our media team gets bigger and bigger, we respond quicker and quicker. And we have great answers for you. And I'm so excited that you guys continue to trust us to send and reach out. And I love it. I'm actually starting to get a little bit more, savvy when it comes to Instagram. I actually went live this morning. I don't know if it really worked, but I started putting all the features on. Last night I was here, and it was kind of interesting. I didn't realize that you could actually put like sunglasses on while you're live and stuff on there, and had a backgrounds. It was just some cool stuff. All right, so love the media stuff, love the things that are coming through. So once again, thank you for all you guys that continue to pop on and listen to a message that I have to share. And today is no different. Today is definitely a message that seems pretty controversial, but if you ever notice, it's kind of a theme with a different perspective, or any video that I or any of the docs across the Wellness Way community do, we share our experience. I think the greatest thing that anybody can ever do in anybody's life is share their experience. I encourage you guys that any experience that you have from any area, if you're a plumber to a doctor to a photographer to anything, share your story, because it's interesting to see the evolution of it. I love stories. It's why People magazine is still actually a very sold magazine in the realm of not really having magazines, because everything's digital today, because people like reading other people's stories. Well, today is a story that I've actually am going to share how I've came to my conclusions of GMOs. I'm not going to tell you what I believe that we should do with GMOs. I'm hoping to walk you through my thought process with it, and maybe you'll come to the same conclusion. I'm finding out as I walk you through the science of my thinking of what we've done, that most people do come to the same conclusions, because it's very precise, and I had to go through what you had to go through. It's quite interesting. I was the kind of person, I hope you are too, that if someone says something to you that challenges your current level of thinking, the person giving you that argument should actually be able to walk you through and make it very simple for you to go, that makes sense. And then it's time for you to wrestle with that idea. Think about this. I actually shared just a little video yesterday about how one pathway of the liver works. And it's very significant. It's significant to see how it processes medications, and it's quite well known. And that's why, once again, that pathway can be affected by multiple things, but the development of that pathway doesn't really happen to 1 year of age. What does that mean? That means if something doesn't work till 1 year's age, and you put something in the body that it can't get rid of till 1 year age, don't put it in before 1 year age. And it was kind of funny in that video, actually a little rant that I did here kind of went viral. It went viral because it makes sense. I've always said an educator takes something and makes it very complex so they sound smart. A communicator and a connector takes something very complex and makes it simple. So I'm going to do this today. I'm going to walk through the topic of GMOs from my simplistic aspect of what made me determine, do I eat them or not? And once again, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'm going to walk through. By the time that I'm done, I'm hoping you join my thinking through this and get a perspective that's different than you hear out there today. Because once again, all you do is when someone says, I like them, I don't like them, it becomes an emotional debate. So I try to stay out of those. I try to stay out of the emotional debates and walk through the simple thinking of it. So let's go through it. And that's why, if you ever notice, when I start about perspective, I want to see how people define things. Because when you define things, you can find out where they're coming from. And that's the big part. I've always said this. as you guys know, we're coming up on an election year, all right? I love talking about politics, but once again, I think politics is a good thing to actually set the basis for it. I tell people, if you want to talk politics, you should know your Constitution, you should know your Bill of Rights, and you should know your Federalist Papers. If you don't, then it's just what I believe back and forth. So the same thing that comes with any healthcare topic, that if you want to discuss something from GMOs to vaccines to medications to an adjustment to an herb, once again, you should actually do a really good job of actually doing some good research. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through what they are classified by the people that make them, because I want to get their definition of it, and then we can see how they're made and what they do. And if you can come to the same conclusions that they do, great. If you come to the same conclusions that I do, great. But I believe that we should make the connections and walk through it. So here we go. So let's start here. What are they? Just what are they in general? Okay, GMOs. So let's see how they define them in their world. Their GMOs are genetically modified organisms, is a result of a laboratory process. Okay, let's stop right there. GMOs do not exist in nature. Let me say it again. They can grow in nature, but they don't exist in nature. Do not confuse hybrid or crossbreeding of certain species that way with actually this. You can take when you what do? You take a horse and a something like this and a donkey, and it creates a mule, but a mule's sterile. So it's kind of funny. It's like there's just some things that can crossbreed. There's some things that can't crossbreed. So, but the idea is this: that still happens in nature. If a horse breeds with a donkey, you get a mule, but the mule is actually sterile now. The mule can't. I don't know if you guys know that the mule can't breed and get another mule. The only way you get a mule is actually by breeding it with a donkey, okay, with a horse. But the idea is, but the nature says, we're not continuing this process, so therefore it stops. Well, GMOs do not exist in nature. It's only produced within a laboratory process. So right there, and then I'm going, all right, if I'm going to stick something that belongs in my body, which actually nature has created for me to consume and become my body parts, being in a laboratory kind of gives me flag number one, all right? But let's keep going on. Results of a laboratory process of taking genes, okay, little codes of amino acids, from one species and inserting them into another in an attempt to attain desirable traits or characteristics. Hence, they are also known as transgenic organisms. Transgenic organisms. But there's a part that I want you guys to read in detail, because if you actually read the scientific literature about GMOs itself, I'm going to explain this a little bit. They're hoping to obtain a desired trait, okay, an attempt to actually obtain a desired trait. Well, what does it tell you just in that conversation right there? I'm going to show you how they do them. They're just kind of poking and praying a little bit, because you cannot microscopically pull gene out and put a new gene back in. It doesn't work that way, okay? I'm going to show you how it's done, but the idea is this. It's like there's an attempt and try to get a desired result. Okay, but let's keep going on. The process may be called either genetic engineering, GE, genetic modification, or genetic manipulation. They are all one and the same. So if you see the term engineering, modification, or manipulation, actually the first, from what I read, the first term, which I didn't even know until I was actually presenting everything for this, the first term that they actually came up with, what scientists called these at first, was genetic manipulation. Okay, but think of it this way. They did this for marketing purposes. Let me see a question, media team. If you saw something that said, I'm going to eat that's a genetically manipulated organism. Well, manipulation isn't too, welcoming to the public in any realm. All of the media team is like, I'm not touching that. So genetically modified doesn't sound as detrimental. So they actually changed it based on advertising encouragements to actually not use the word manipulation. So, but because it was one of the first terms created for it, that's why it's actually still listed as genetically manipulated organisms. Now, so you'll see that. That's why you'll see GM. GM stands for both manipulated and also modified, but they changed it to modified for the purposes of the public. So let's kind of go on. Which crops are there? The majority of crops that exist in the United States, and sometimes even Canada, it's a little bit more, But in the United States alone, these are the major crops. Now, there's more than this. There's everything, as you guys know, we have a wonderful office in Hawaii. And when we go there, and we'll actually be there in February, and we will actually go to the plant where they created this. They actually, in Kauai, they have a huge Monsanto and DuPont plant where they actually experiment to create GMOs. And what happened is you can drive right up a plant, it's all fenced in and things. It's on the way west side of the island that way. But they actually even have papaya that they've actually created on there. So there's more of this, there's zucchini, there's squash that they do. But if you look at the majority of the market today that actually is there is soy, corn, canola oil, cotton, sugar beets. These are a significant high percentage. It's why, if you think about this, it's why you look at soy itself, 94% of all soy in the United States alone on the market today is actually GMO. Now, if GMOs are good, that's no problem. If GMOs are bad, this concept of soy being a health food, once again, would kind of negate it, okay? So let's go through here. So let's kind of go that we kind of know what it is. We kind of know what crops are there. How do they actually make it? Okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty of it that way. So how is it actually done? Okay, how do they take it, and how do they take that cell and make it into a different manipulated cell that way? Well, let's go through it. There's actually 4 methods that they do scientifically in the major biotech companies. So let's read about it. Because living organisms have natural barriers to protect themselves against the introduction of DNA from different species. Now think about that. That statement right there. Nature has protection systems so this doesn't happen. Hold the phone on that. Think about that for a second. Nature actually has protection systems for this not to happen. A little more convincing, once again, that maybe we shouldn't be doing this. I mean, if you think about it, and this happens in human cells, this happens in bacterial cells, this happens in, that's why we can't breed with other animals. That's why we can't breed with monkeys and produce a half human, okay? It's quite interesting how biology itself of all species protects itself. So they put the barriers in there, okay? Now, genetic engineers have to find ways to force. Now remember, this is right from their scientific literature. See, I've always told people, whenever you present something, make sure, for example, that if you have an opinion, what you think, share that with us. This is right from their literature. I'm pulling it from their papers, all right? So it's like, but people don't read this. They read headlines. And once again, the headlines are controlled by who they pay to do it. People say, I saw it on news. Who paid the news? I saw it on the ad. Who paid for the ad, okay? But you start to read their literature, it kind of freaks you out a little bit. Find ways to force the DNA from one organism into another. These methods include, think about this, using viruses and bacteria to infect animal or plant cells with new DNA. That's actually the major way of doing it. Let me say it again. That's actually the major way of doing it. I want you to think about this. Genetically modified, manipulated organisms actually use majorly viruses and bacteria that are forced into a cell to change it. Now, basically to infect it. That happens in the human body. That's called an infection. That leads to spreading and death. There might be a little correlation with that, okay? They use viruses and bacteria to go in there and change the gene structure. Now, there's other ways. Coating DNA onto tiny metal pellets and firing them with a specific gun into the cells. So basically, they take it and impregnate it into a cell in the attempt that the DNA will coincide with the other DNA. Once again, here we go. Injecting the new DNA into fertilized eggs with a very fine needle. Using electroshock to create holes in the membrane covering sperm, and then forcing the new DNA into the sperm through these holes. So, if you think about this, this is why it has to be done in a laboratory. There's no natural process of actually forcing DNA into a cell. You have to go by all the protective barriers that are made for these things to actually not happen. So, right there alone, I'm sitting there going, now remember, I'm just walking through my thought process when I decided decided, you can kind of know where I'm going with this, when I decided not to have GMOs in my household, not to have encourage people to do GMOs as a clinician that way, because I'm going, man, as these things alter, there's a reason why nature says don't belong here, because when it goes here, it has to know that genetic sequence in order to break it down and make it a part of you. So then here we go. Let's look at this. So how accurate is genetic engineering? Because I kind of showed you how they did it. And people are thinking it's an extreme scientific process. No, it's not. In every scientific journal, they talk about its attempt to actually inject the DNA and hope that the result comes out. Now here's what they found. The technology of genetic engineering, now this is from their papers, is currently very crude. It is not possible to insert a new gene with any accuracy, and the transfer of new genes can disrupt the finely controlled network of DNA in an organism. Man, this is from their stuff. We're talking about the people that do this stuff, the people that do the injections. And I'm going right there. See, that's why people say it's so scientific. Guys, the purpose of science is to disprove something. It's not to prove something. The scientific method, they've totally put this backwards. It's to disprove something, not prove something. That was never meant, scientific, the whole purpose of science is a constant look, an observation that way. And then as new technology comes out, there's new ways to observe things. I can honestly tell you, there's labs that came out since I started practice that didn't exist when I started practice 21 years ago. And it gives you insight and observation to the way the body is. That's why I've always said this. If you look at anatomy books, if you look at especially immunology books, okay, the majority of things that they talk about are theories and hypothesis, but they try to come back as scientific fact, because that's why people say the fact of the matter is, I'm like going, ooh, when people say that, especially in immunology, you really lose me. Because all I have to do is bring up saying your understanding of fact is just because a professor or a scientist wrote it down in a book. Guess what happens? There was a fact that DET was good for you. There was a fact that smoking was good for you. So be careful when people are talking about science. Science is meant to disprove things, not prove things. That's what the scientific method was actually created for. Go back in its history. So that's when people say it's scientific. I'm like, good, they disproved it then. Because that's the purpose of science. It should be our current observation. You ever hear me speak that way? I'll talk about the current observations of how the body is viewed and what happens, okay? Now, here we go. Current understanding of the way in which DNA works is extremely limited. Do you understand, guys? We know very little about the genome. And we think we're going to go in there and manipulate nature. I mean this sincerely. I do mean this sincerely. I'm a country boy. I can countlessly tell you, I think the DNR is probably one of the most interesting organizations I've ever seen my whole entire life. Why? Because every time they try to control nature, something else goes wrong. We have too many squirrels, so we're going to plant foxes. And then there's too many foxes, and it affects the rabbit population. And we have this many fish, and so we're going to do this. And we're going to control the weeds in the lake, and then these comes up. I think God has it, guys. Do you see him? And that's my opinion. So let me leave that. I think that's my opinion. Anytime you see anybody manipulate, control, try to interfere with nature, it always goes bad. It does. Here, something in Wisconsin. DNR plants wolves. Wow, we have a wolf problem. Big surprise. And now they're complaining about other things that happen. Well, you got to go back to think of this. Anytime man tries to interfere with nature, we're in trouble. Now they're talking about, we're going to get down to the microscopic gene aspect, and we're going to actually use viruses. Actually, you know what's really funny? What's that movie with Will Smith? It's going to come true. I'm not joking. What's that movie with Will Smith where the scientists inject viruses into cancer cells and it kills it? What's it called? I Am Legend. You think I'm joking. This is I Am Legend all over again. And those humans turn into this crazy manipulated population, and there's zombies everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I'm not joking. You look at this world, we're getting some zombies there. And it's kind of scary. I Am Legend scares me. When they're taking viruses and bacterium, and they're putting them into cells to manipulate them, and then telling us that they know very little about the gene code that way, but you know, in our attempt to throw it in there, and all their scientific literature actually says, we don't know what's really happening, but we're just going to keep on doing it. Wow, you know, just like they used to spray DDT on kids, and you wonder why polio and iron lung symptoms happen, and they're just going to blame it on some virus. Here's a virus, okay? This is stuff you got to watch for, guys. This stuff scares me. It scares me because I'm going, if you can't logically walk me through this, don't do it. All right? Now, here we go. And any change in the DNA of the organism at any point can have side effects that are impossible. There we go. Impossible to predict or control. The new gene code could, for example, alter chemical reactions within a cell and disrupt cell function. No kidding. Okay? This could lead to instability, the creation of new toxins or allergens, and changes in nutritional value. Do you understand in the UK, the reason why they started to ban these things? Because when they started to have genetically modified soy, look this up. The amount of soy allergies that people started to get increased over 50%. Increased so dramatically, at least their government said, whoa, 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 hold the phone. There's a correlation there. Now, every United States scientist said, no, there's no correlation. I love it how, for example, people try to pinpoint everything in medicine and science as this is what it is until they're responsible for causing the problem. Then they're like, there's so many variables. There's so many variables. There's wind changes, there are weather changes. But, you know, Sam, I always love when it's responsible. Guys, remember this. I do this sincerely. If you ever see government tied with big business, please run. Because they're always going to tell you the facts about how facts they are until later in life when they actually hurt enough people and it's done. This is the scary part. Because these companies, these biotech companies, are directly connected to our government. It's kind of sad. That's why they actually get government funding. Do you ever notice? It's kind of funny. If I were to go back to this list, let me jump back for a second. Do you understand that these things have government subsidies tied to them? They do. Take government subsidies away from this, you would see a whole different farming system. See, government subsidies are tied to this big time. You know, why don't they, if you're going to government subsidize something, why don't you government subsidize something that's good for people? Because these things you should stay away from. Now, so let's continue. So I tell people, but they have safety studies. Actually, that's not true. They don't have safety studies. They really don't. And on the flip side, once again, they say, well, then they have damaging studies. Well, I'll show you what they really have. Now remember, this is not a joke. I'm going to actually now pull out a lot of literature and show you the references that way so you can see these things. See, I always tell people, I will always have your copy for you to read. But like I said, I take this from a person from, I heard a person's talk. I'm trying to spit it out myself. His name is Colin Noir. He actually has a very great catchphrase. He said, let my voice be your voice. It's why I try to do a lot of videos and make them extremely simple, because then you have to say, you can say, Mom, Dad, we don't eat GMOs. Well, why not? Well, guess what? Watch Dr. Flynn's video. Here, he'll walk you through it. But the reason why I'm doing this and why I put up all the references, because I want people to, for you science people, you people that want to go in and read detail, I want to have them for you because that's what I do. So when a person tells me something, I don't care if it's a person in my profession or somebody that's in the medical profession or somebody that way, and they tell me something, I'm like, cool, let me go and investigate it myself. Because then if I can't walk through it and I can't teach it to you that way, I'm going to have a very, very tough time having an opinion on it that way. So let's go through. But they have safety studies. Not really, okay? Because here's what they did. Here's their major safety study that they did, all right? Now, the only feeding study done in humans, okay, let me say it again. The only safety study done in humans showed that GMOs survived inside the stomach of people eating GMO food. That's it. That's what they showed. I'm not joking. I was trying to say, okay, let me see all the studies they've done in humans. They don't exist. They don't. See, what they do, and this is how even the medical profession fails dramatically. What they say, well, population-wise, we've been eating them for a long time, and therefore we don't see a negative effect. Have you looked around the world? People are fatter and sicker than ever. So if that's your basis, and I'll show you how they make that basis in their study about it, that if that's your criteria that GMOs are safe in humans, you really have to evaluate your scientific method, okay? Now, various feeding studies in animals have resulted. Now, here's one thing. So on the flip side, they have done animal studies where they actually fed them things, okay? They fed them GMOs. And potently precancerous cells grow, damage immune systems, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy and increased density of the liver, odd-shaped cells and nuclei, and other unexplained anomalies, false pregnancies, and higher death rates in animals. Now, once again, your pro-GMO people will actually put that off as correlation. It's kind of like this. Doc, my child got a vaccine, and I got a bad fever and lost all cognitive function. That was coincidence. That was coincidence. You know how many times when I read their studies and people's scientific opinions was coincidence. That happens all the time. Any scientist that comes and says coincidence because they're trying to defend their position isn't a scientist. It's kind of sad. But once again, if you kind of look at it this way, there isn't any independent people that say this didn't work. It's actually people, they put, here guys, if you ever see always remember this, in government, if there is organizations that have alphabets, don't trust them. Do you know why? Because they're not elected government officials. They're not. They're appointed. That means there's no accountability. Okay? So when you actually see advocacy groups, a lot of them, AA, whatever, this is this. The scientific thing this way. Find out where they're funded from, and you can tell what they will say on everything. They will. Do you see what I'm saying? AARP, no joke. Once again, who they're funded? Insurance companies. They don't want insurance to go away for Medicare people that way. So they're gonna vote all this way. See, you look at these support groups that actually say this is not a valid study, you'll find out that they come from some college. You find out their funding comes from Monsanto or a Bayer or actually DuPont, all the people that do what? See, so that, and they call them a pro-science because most people fall in this trap, guys, and this happens a lot with GMOs. If they put the word science in their name, people automatically give it credibility. They automatically do. The sad part is this, if you actually read what they wrote, it'd be very hard to even trust them. So when you look at these things, it's quite crazy. Now, so I pulled up the studies, human effects on genetically engineered crops, and they go through, and then what they do is they kind of talk about the stuff that we were talking about, and I love this ending. I love this ending, okay? They talk about, for example, that there's not really that much difference between GMO and non-GMO. Long-term epidemiological studies have not directly addressed genetically engineered food consumption, but available time series epidemiological studies do not show any disease or chronic conditions in populations that correlate with the consumption of genetically engineered foods. What are they saying? They're saying that there's no studies done, but here's what happens. If we just look at the American population or the countries that have this, we can't really tell any disease or chronic conditions. Where are they studying? What are they looking at? Our world, you hear me say this repeatedly. Every year, statistically, we get sicker and sicker and sicker. Now, is this the only factor? I'll say no. I'll say that there's multiple factors that contribute to it. But to act like, our population is doing good, and so therefore, even though we have no studies, we have no epidemiological studies on it that way, long term, well, actually we do, just not in humans. Do you understand, guys? You guys are nothing more than a government and big business petri dish that they experiment on. And they call it science. And all I have to do is say it's scientific, and the majority of the public falls for it. They do. So that's why I'm going, take some time to learn. Because as you do, you'll think differently about these things, which will lead to different actions. But you look at the studies they talk about, there is none. So then you have anti-GMO people, and guess what? Then you have pro-GMO people, and then you have anti-GMO people, and they have pro, and all they do is they fight back and forth about this is good, and it leaves everybody confused. I guarantee you, say, Doc, you kind of made me a little confused. I actually don't really totally understand. So, well, let me do this. That wasn't the reason why. This just made me suspect. I'm going, I don't like what they're writing down, because once again, they're not communicating what they do to the public. See, I would have no problem. with GMOs going, this is a big experiment. Do you understand? I wouldn't have any problem with it. I would not have any problem with GMOs actually being on the market if all they told people was, this is a big experiment. We don't know. We're trying it. And if it doesn't work, we're in trouble. If it does work, it's cool. Do you understand? But they don't do that. Whatever happened to honesty in business? Whatever happened to honesty when it comes to people's lives? You understand? It frustrates me. Because then what happens is, guess what, guys? No joke. As you guys start to listen to these videos, you start to do things publicly with us across the world, holidays aren't going to be that fun anymore. Because you're going to go to grandma's house and mom and dad's house on Thanksgiving, and you're not going to eat 90% of what they do, and they're going to call you, that they're not going to be nice. And all you're doing is making a choice because of what you learned. And that happens to be like, well, why aren't you doing this? And people are offended because you choose to go a different path. Man, let's look at the United States alone. They're sicker than ever. Weight problems are all-time high. All you have to do is totally opposite what they tell you, and you're going to be healthier and better off. The majority of people are sick. The majority of people, once again, watch the Democratic debates now. All they're arguing about, and their biggest selling point, is free healthcare for everybody. Well, why do they want it free? Because it's ridiculously cost, and it does make people go bankrupt, and they lose everything based on it that way. Well, guess what? Healthy people don't spend a lot on healthcare. They really don't. Do you understand? So I want you to think about this a little bit that way, and that's why all of a sudden I'm like, okay, there has to be a reason why all these things happen. And then I have my light bulb moment. I'm like, we have to stop talking about people about GMO or non-GMO, organic or not organic that way. I'm like going, what is one of the biggest correlations that you see with GMOs? Why were GMOs even produced? And then it struck me. I'm like, you can't have GMOs really without one other thing. And this is the biggest part. This was actually produced before GMOs. This was the funny part. Actually, this was discovered in 1970, okay, by this company. To me, personally, with the exception of the government, is probably the most evil thing on the planet, and that's Monsanto. Okay, what they have done, and that's my opinion, so let me put it this way, that's my opinion, I'll share my opinion, all right? But when you look at what they've done, once again, is you cannot think of GMOs without thinking about glyphosate. I can't even say it today. I'm all tongue-tied today. Glyphosate. Glyphosate, aka Roundup Ready for you guys. This is a direct correlation with them. What they've done is they produce a chemical that they put into our environment for a long period of time, and then they produce seeds that actually can survive that other plants cannot. That, once again, that doesn't exist in nature. That was created in a laboratory. That's why when you see people, they make fun of these people, but I think they're actually, just concerned. People will call it frankenfood, and because what you do when you disagree with somebody, you try to degrade them and say, oh, these are the people these are the hippies that call it frankenfood. Well, it is frankenfood. It was made in the laboratory. Doesn't exist in nature. And then they have a chemical that they can spray onto the plant that doesn't die, but everything else dies around it. That kind of right there, number two, I'm like going, all right, if it doesn't die, there's a reason why. So I started to actually figure out the biochemical pathways, and let me go here. That's the big thing. Guys, I've been sharing this with you guys lately. I share this with my docs very consistently. If you understand the pathways of how the body works, if you understand the pathways how the brain, biochemistry, liver, bacteria and stuff work that way, man, it's cool. Because when we do figure these things out and see these things, we can actually support these pathways. Well, let me show you what happens with this glyphosate, all right? So now, let's just pull up the toxicity. So we're actually just reading from the National Pesticide Information Center. It's a public nonprofit forum paid for by them, all right? What is it? Glyphosate is an herbicide. It applies to leaves and plants to kill both broadleaf plants and grasses, all right? Now, once again, they're trying to actually kill the things that grow in nature around its food source. What's the purpose of that? Guys, what's the purpose of that? Profit. Profit. There's no need for herbicides, pesticides. None. You say, Doc, well, it could damage a crop. No, you still have a crop, you just don't have as much of a crop. See, therefore, once again, the reason why it has happened this way is because it's much easier to spray something on than to manually do it itself. Because before all this existed, if you had a weed, you walked out there and you pulled it. You say, but that takes man labor. Well, that makes costs go up. So what they do, they've created these things to actually kill off things, but then they were dying off of the plants. So what they had to do is they had to create seeds that were resistant to the chemicals itself. Now, how does it work? Well, this is pretty cool. See, they know how these things work. It's quite obvious on this. Now watch. Well, how does glyphosate work? Glyphosate is a non-selective herbicide. Let me say that again. It's non-selective. They can't control what it does. They can't say, it's like this. Doc, I'm going to give you a sir, I'm going to give you a medication called a statin drug to lower your cholesterol levels. Okay? They give it and they so focus on the one thing and they talk about your cholesterol, the cholesterol. You know what they can't stop? The unintended consequence of taking that statin drug is, and this is basic knowledge, that pathway actually not only affects the production and metabolism of cholesterol, but it also interferes with the production and metabolism of coenzyme Q10. It's a unspecific consequence of that multiple pathways exist throughout the body, and the side effect, something we didn't want to happen, I love how they call it a side effect, it's a direct effect, actually reduces your coenzyme Q10, which now actually is the number one amino acid for your heart. That's why statins cause heart problems. Isn't that funny? They talk about lowering cholesterol to make your heart better, yet one of the side effects of statin drugs is what? Heart disease. Try on the label. Now watch this. The non-specific herbicide means it kills most plants. It prevents plants from making certain proteins that are needed for plant growth. All right, here's what happens. For you guys that are vegans, our body takes those amino acids and actually breaks their proteins, breaks those down, and makes us out of them. So if it can inhibit that within a plant, don't you think that'll affect us? Just logical thinking of A to B to C to D. All right, but it gets better. Glyphosate stops the specific enzyme pathway. There you go. See, all of nature, and I've gotten my doctors to understand this at a high level, all of nature, from the body to the environment, actually has pathways. And a true scientist will do what? They'll observe their pathways and see how they can support them. I'm going to show you how to support a liver pathway to remove this from your body. See, one thing is this, but what they do, most science, most medicine, most witchcraft is meant to manipulate things and actually try to inhibit them and control nature. How has that worked for us? Do you say? Because here's what happens. Watch this. It's actually called the schematic acid pathway. This pathway is necessary for plants and some microorganisms. Hold the phone. There we go. It's universal. You understand that there's nothing that's just by itself in nature. We are no separate from the ground and the ground separate from us. That's what we're going back to once we die. We are no separate from viruses and bacteria than they are from us. They need us and we need them. So when you start doing this, you'll start interfering with not only pathways in nature, but where do you think that's coming? It's coming to us. Now, if you see, it inhibits the plant enzyme EPSP. Once again, there's the long word for it. I won't name it for you. Involved in the synthesis of 3 amino acids: tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. All amino acids that are needed for our brain. All amino acids needed for actually our growth and development of our body. Now watch this. This is where it gets kind of interesting. But guess what? It also inhibits certain bacteria and funguses and other things in other plants. But here's the cool part, which is a really sad part. It actually really inhibits bacteria of a certain creature in nature. Can anybody know what it is? Let's see if they put this in the comments. Let's see if they can get this in the comments. And this is why it's so detrimental to the world. Because this glyphosate, or I can't say the word today. Glyphosate actually inhibits a major bacteria in bees. In bees. And that's why they're dying off at such a huge rate. Is because it's inhibiting their bacteria, and we know this. If you were to kill off all your normal flora, guys, you would die yourself. It's actually interfering with the bacteria that disrupts it. They know this. It's well known. How is this still legal? How is this still legal? Why don't you ask Bill Gates, who's part owner of Monsanto? Why don't you ask all the people that are politically involved with Monsanto and all these companies? You should be downright disgusted. Because it's not like this isn't documented. It's not like this has not been known. They do not even argue this anymore. But they're still allowed. Because you know why? I will tell you this personally, and this is going to sound interesting. I have family members that are farmers, and they actually get downright mad when I tell them this. Because instead of accepting as a farmer that they've actually done some damage, they've done it ignorantly. They don't want to take responsibility. They don't. They say this, and no, don't go there. See, they heard from a representative that their spray, that their glyphosate isn't damaging. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why it's kind of interesting. It's like when you start to understand things and how they work and what's going on, it will separate you from people. It's really sad because people don't want truth. People don't want knowledge. Sometimes they'll stay ignorant because they could be one of the contributors to why this happens. Heck, we live in the farming state. I'm going to show you the glyphosate levels across the whole United States. It's going to freak you out. All right. Now, if we look at this, here we go. Let's look at some more. Wait, hold the phone. Oh, I know people do say this, and I agree with this a bunch. Are we really allergic to the gluten? Or is it because that there's so much things involved with it that way, and corn and things like that that actually can contribute to celiac and things like that? Yeah? You guys know this because this is illegal in a lot of foreign countries. Do you understand? Sometimes people go across to Europe and go, Doc, I ate the bread and nothing happened. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that because it's different. So that's why you and I know you guys hear it all the time. I went across Italy and didn't have, yeah, I know, once again. So when you look at what they're doing here, see, that's why we have to understand that the things that go on sometimes is not because it's the food. Sometimes you're not allergic to it, and you know I'm intense about allergies because it's the food. Sometimes it's what they've done to the food, is why your body says, you don't belong here. Guess what? If the bee actually even gets glyphosate on them, it destroys their bacteria. It'll kill them. So think about this. What do you think it does to us? All right. Now, it gets better. Exposure to glyphosate-based insecticides and the risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the chemical AMPA, it's another acid that is a derivative of it that way. Now, it's kind of interesting. Everybody knows about this case across the world about how the individual, once again, was awarded $289 million to the man they say got cancer from Monsanto's Roundup weed killer. It's actually very easy once you actually see a scientific literature that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma has a direct connection with it. If you type in Roundup, the first ads that come up are actually are lawyers. They're actually, if you go on Google, type in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Roundup. Man, lawyer ads are right up there. They actually dominate. You can see the Google ads before it. Do you know why? Because they know this. They're searching for people. Now it's interesting. Here's the fun part. So I started to go, well, let's look at that let's look at that active ingredient, AMPA, okay? And once again said, wow, aminomethylforsonic acid. And actually, so I pulled up the Minnesota Health Department as they were getting complaints of water runoff, because once again, once it's sprayed, it runs into our water systems. That's why water systems are so important to have on your house infiltration system. Not only for what the water systems they put in chemicals and fluoride, but what's actually runoff from our farmers. So when you look at it this way, they kind of went through and they said, okay, let's look at the toxicology summary. And they found out that there's been no safety studies done on endocrine, immunological, reproductive, or neurotoxicity. They've done some things on development, and they showed that the development of these animals has been slowed down. Yet, once again, and it's kind of interesting how they even talk about it right here. AMPA has not been tested for immunotoxicity via oral ingestion. However, AMP has negative or dermal sensitization in guinea pigs. So they never put it in them, but they just put it on their skin and said, well, good, no toxicity. I mean, think about this. And this is allowed as science to say that's safe and effective? Okay, it gets better. Decreased fetal body weight was reported when it was exposed in the rats, okay? They actually had major toxicity, they had lower development, they actually approximately 240 times higher in chronic RFD. AMP has not been tested for neurotoxicity. My goodness. And that's why people say, it's safe. I'm like, where are you getting that from? They've tested. What have they tested? See, all you have to do is say something loud enough and long enough and people will believe it. I hope you've gotten that now. That quote came from Adolf Hitler. Because if you keep on repeating it and repeat and repeat it, people will downright, even family members of mine, will downright get mad when you say, listen, when you're spraying Roundup on the fields, you're not only poisoning actually yourselves and people that get that food, but you're poisoning the world. And they'll get mad. Instead of saying, well, maybe I should do something different. Because if we don't, we're going to see the things that are happening here. Now, once again, the effects on AMPA, guess what? And they found out that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It actually damages it in humans. In humans, guys. So think about it this way. In a human model, the effect and damage it does is actually, it's kind of scary. They actually, our data indicates that accidental exposure to this, for example, is actually just high levels of it may result in neurological damage. It's right there. So don't tell me it has not been studied. And for example, and don't tell me that, once again, that the studies that they have on this make it safe, make it effective. Because when I'm reading all this stuff, I'm sitting here going, where did they get this from? How is it that they mislead the public so much on this? It's kind of scary. Now, so once again, there we go. There is a preliminary, once again, report of the uses of glyphosate through the United States. Where do we live? Look at Iowa. Oh my goodness. Look at Illinois. Look at Minnesota. I mean, our Midwest is just loaded with it. It's kind of funny. People are like, be proud, Wisconsin, the farming state. No, I'm not proud of Wisconsin farming state. I'm not. Because the majority of farmers actually get government subsidies from the government to buy GMOs, actually, and that's why organic farmers have to actually come to people like us and help them build their farms, because they don't get those subsidies, because they don't actually get Roundup, and they don't get Monsanto seed, and they don't get these things. So they have to actually do it the old-fashioned way, called capitalism. Not crony capitalism, where government involves these things and actually does it. It's so sad. One of our organic farmers that stopped by yesterday. Once again, every season he does it by himself. He doesn't get those subsidies. You know something? But the big farmer down the road that has 10,000 acres get not only government subsidies, but what happens is he gets paid to actually, if he doesn't use his corn and soy, the government pays him and he gets to destroy it. Really? This is what we've come to? This is what we come to for our food source, and then you'll wonder why, once again, the organic farmer can't spend ads like crazy and tell how amazing his food is, because you know why? Our organic farmer is great, but guess what happens? There's not that much profit in food. So therefore, he gives us a great product. He comes directly to patients and people that way, gives us an amazing product. He dropped off some awesome apples and pears and a beautiful basket, thanking us for another good season, because we helped him, once again, by buying a great product for him, and he keeps on producing good food without junk on it that way. And that's what we need to do. We need to get back to that. We need to stop being subsidized. You know, it's really funny. It's like anything, once again, that the government gets involved in, especially with business, is going to go bad. It's all profiteering. This is not, it's kind of funny, and all they'll do is get on TV and report again and again and again, GMOs are good, GMOs are good, Roundup's good, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, where are they getting this from? It destroys the blood-brain barrier. It actually causes some brain damage, and that's okay. And that's okay. It's not okay with me. That's why it's a fight sometimes. I can tell people, Annie Visser, who's here today, came up with this quote: I'm not in it for the income, I'm in it for the outcome. That's what the Wellness Way does. We are in it for the outcome. We're in it for the better. What benefit do we get actually by sharing the GMO message with you? What benefit? We're trying to actually make a better world for actually all of us going forward that way. We want actually a less toxic world. We want organic farmers to thrive in their business so they can deliver us a good, healthy product at a good cost. And that's what our farmer, Dan, has done, and other organic farmers that we use across the Midwest here, okay? Now, if you look, so let's go on. Oh, look at this. Hodgkin's lymphoma has seasonal patterns in the incidence and latitude. Think about this. Seasonal. Wow, they found out it's coincidence that during summer and during the seasons of actual farming that the rate of actually this goes up. I actually read this, I'm like, come on now. They can't make it any more plain. It's seasonal. I'm like going, wow, we have seasonal cancers. Well, no, it's that when you're exposed the most, that's what they found out. When you're exposed the most, I know it's hard to actually even read some of these things sometimes. They're going, it's sitting you right in the face. But in the article it says, we have no idea why. Do you see what I'm saying? They have no idea why something bad could happen from something this way, but it's just coincidence, all right? Now, I'm sorry, so GMOs, glyphosates, AMA pathways, it was an easy decision for me. Number one, here's the steps. Don't consume them. I beg of you, please don't consume them. It's your choice. Do you know what I'm saying? It's your choice. That's the coolest thing about most of healthcare. You want to stay healthy, you want to keep your costs down, don't do it. And yes, doc, I know, I've heard this millions of times. Food is by far, I put this out there, food by far is more emotional than ever is physical. I get it. Guess what? A Snickers bar tastes darn good. Don't eat them, but get my point? Do you ever notice, here, think of it this way. You know what sounds really good to me right now? Taco Bell. Really good right now. 8:59, 8:52 in the morning right now. Taco Bell. I don't even know what they make there anymore, but I would burrito it up and give me some chalupas or whatever they have over there. It just, I remember in college, I went to college here in GB for one of my colleges, and I used to live over on Dan's. That Taco Bell, I was at there every day until I realized what it was actually producing. I get it. I totally do. Food is so emotional. Actually, remember I grew up, my grandpa had a bar across the road from us, and I'd walk over there and get a Coca-Cola and a Kit Kat bar. So you know what I'm craving right now? Taco Bell, Coca-Cola, and a Kit Kat bar. Every one of them are full of GMO junky ingredients. So therefore I won't do it. Do I want it? Heck yeah. Organic salad, Taco Bell. You know where I'm going every time. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not going to do it, but my emotions and my desire is going, I don't want the salad. Give me Taco Bell, okay? I get it. I do. So don't think people think, well, doc, your nutritional degree help you reduce your cravings for it? No, not one bit. Do you see what I'm saying? Not one bit. I get it. I understand that process. So anyways, don't consume. Number two, guess what? Here we go. Go organic. Number two, get tested. Wait, what do you mean get tested? Actually, you can actually test to see their Great Plains Laboratory does a great job. Now, here's what happens. Do I think people need to get tested for this? No, I don't. I will be honest with you. The only time this has ever been tested is when somebody has come in and asked for it. I've never ran it. Do you know what I'm saying? I've never ran it. I know why some people run it. They're trying to show that their high toxic levels can contribute to cancer and stuff like that. I get that. As a clinician, I've never ran it because once again, it's like this. Doc, I want to test and see if my heavy metals in my mouth are bad for me. No, they're bad for you. Get your amalgam fillings out. Don't need to test for them. Don't need to worry about them. They're bad. Get them out. You say, Em, can you run an amalgam hypersensitivity test? Yep. Why do you want to spend $300? Just get the fillings out. They're bad for you. Okay? It's that simple. Don't eat them. Do the things you need to do to actually get this out of your body. Now here's what happens. I talked about this way. Remember, if you think about it this way, most of healthcare, go back to that statin drug, is all about manipulations of pathways. The wellness way is about supporting those pathways. It's about testing all those things and actually seeing where A can't convert to B to C to D. Okay? It's actually a pretty intense scientific process. Okay? It's kind of great. So when you look at it this way, number one, support the liver pathways because you can clear these things out of your body. Because here's what happens. Glyphosate actually suppresses our liver enzymes and affects our gut biome. They call it the pathways to modern disease. So you better do everything you possibly can to support these processes in the world we live in. Now, a lot of you guys are already doing this if you are under our care because there is an effect. Now watch. They actually look at WebMD, a study. Roundup linked to human liver damage. Now once again, why don't you hear this on Fox News, CNN, NBC? Because I don't care if you're a conservative or a liberal, those news stations are still controlled by all these companies. Do you understand? You can see who donates to the politicians. I'm sorry, we're getting the political aspect that way. Not sorry about talking politics, but I'm saying political aspect because, once again, do you understand that they donate to both campaigns? They do. They do. That's why people say, Doc, here. If you remember, let's go back to the Obama administration. The food babe was sitting up front talking about label GMOs, label GMOs. And Obama even said, we would need to tell people. I'll actually post the clip below. We need to tell people where their food is coming from. Obama screamed it to get elected. Minute that he got elected, do you know why? Because his director was actually a lobbyist and past president of Monsanto. I don't mean this negatively. So is Trump's. It is. They're so embedded into the system of gaining money from the system, it would freak you out. Why do you think I'm involved in politics? I will fight like crazy against that kind of corruption. For you, for my kids, for my grandkids, for their kids that way. Because if you don't, they will win. See, people say, be kind. Sometimes kindness is a punch in the face. Because you know why? They're punching you in the face all day long. And you're sitting there taking it, thinking you're being kind by saying, please don't do this to us. Sorry, guys, it's not the world we live in. You're going to fight for what you want, or you're going to pass by and let them do what they want to you. It's your choice. I will fight. I will continue to fight. I will use my own personal money to fight. I do every day. And that's why I promise that, for example, that's what we have to do. Because if not, they will win. They are winning. That's why we're so sick. And we got to stand up and say no. They don't have control over what we do. Now, this is what happens. Now here's one of these. Watch this. Well, guess what? Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We talk about that all the time. What they in rats found by chronic exposure to low dose. What they found out is when they fed those rats, you guys seen those studies, they fed those rats little small doses. It creates such toxicity to liver that they got fatty liver. And once you get fatty liver, you get pretty much susceptible to every disease on the planet. Because a lot of those pathways exist, all those pathways exist through the liver. And you can't get rid of junk, you can't metabolize hormones, you can't metabolize neurotransmitters, the gut flora is going to be thrown off. All these things are a domino effect. So then, Doc, what can we do to actually just even start? Well, I've talked to you guys about this thousands of times. Once again, the greatest herb for women on the planet still to this day, Schisandra. Schisandra. Now watch. Let's pull off of all the PubMed medical research and let's pull up WebMD. I love this. Let's go down here. The chemicals in Schisandra improve liver function by stimulating enzymes, proteins that speed up biochemical reactions in the liver and promoting liver cell growth. So not only are you protecting the liver, you're regenerative of the liver. Do you understand? There's certain herbs that are regenerative to the body. I love this one right here. Schisandra is an adaptogen for increasing resistance of disease and stress, increased energy, physical performance, and endurance. Watch this. It is also used to treating, I hate to use it like a drug, Don't talk to them about it like a drug. I hate that. I want them to understand that it's used for the body as a builder. We're carpenter doctors. We're looking at how to build the body, not treat it naturally. Okay? It's also used in treating liver disease and protecting the liver from poisons. Poisons. Oh, now it's funny. Since it's doing with liver, cholesterol, pneumonia, cough, sleep problems, irritability, emotional problems, premenstrual problems, night sweats, all of these things because the liver actually is just doing its normal job. See, that's why I've always told you guys, if there's one herb that I know my wife and daughters, because it's actually so important, because these liver enzymes are also very important to hormone conversion, hormone metabolism, hormone pathways that the Wellness Way doctors know like the back of their hand, because we test those pathways. If you've ever had a Dutch test, it's not a hormone test, it's a pathway test. It's a pathway test. When I'm actually, if you just test testosterone, you've negated all the pathways that led its production and its leaving through the body. Pathways. Oh, I'm obsessed with them. I've been obsessed with them for 20 plus years because pathways help my wife become healthy. Pathways put the Wellness Way clinicians on the map. Pathways is why you're actually listening to this, to appeal to these things. I just love this, Andrew, because it affects the liver so much. I do. As you guys see, I took it yesterday in my Instagram picture. Okay? Incredible stuff to take. I will take it every day. Well, Doc, but you're telling me you should take a supplement every day? No, I'm telling you I'm going to eat a medicine. Let food be thy medicine. Let medicine be thy food. And I take a medicinal herb that actually gives my body what it needs so I can actually go 100 miles an hour every single day. Because I want to give my body what it needs. So those pathways are sufficient. So that's the coolest thing about it. See, it's how we look at the body. Do you look at it as a broken down machine, or do you look at it as an amazing complex of network of pathways that are so awesome and beautiful, and then you see all the chemicals out there that are destroying it? And that's why number 4, don't buy their products. Don't buy their products. Money talks, guys. Guys, listen, when I started practice, you had to go to a specialized health food store to get rice milk. You go to Woodman's or Festival right now, there's 50 different milks. They have camel milk, they have hemp milk, they have every milk on the planet. Heck, soon they're gonna have rock milk. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna get milk from everything. You know why? Consumer demand. Because they found out that dairy from a cow, Monsanto fed cow, created a lot of problems, a lot of allergies and things like that, so people went to alternatives and stuff. See, if you look, you want to go back to this, I'll just give you my opinion. I believe there's so many dairy allergies, including that destroyed my wife, and she grew up on a dairy farm. It destroyed my wife, her health, a dairy allergy. But here's what happens. Dairy's been in our generations for thousands of years. We just messed it up. That's why there's so many dairy allergies today. That's why there's so many gluten allergies. That's why there's so many allergies today, is because we've messed this up. But we can get it back by being good consumers. I don't spend my money on that junk. When I'm traveling, I find a Whole Foods. I go to the organic salad bar. I look at the products. That's why everybody should have labeling of GMOs, but politicians and companies pay people to vote so that you don't have to label it. How disgusted is that? You guys should be downright disgusted that California are places and they shut it down. And they use fear-mongering. Wait, I thought we're the land of the free. If you're so worried about people and GMOs, why don't you let people know what they have? I mean that if you're Obama, I mean that if you're Trump, I mean if you're anybody. See, be careful when people tell you stuff on the political trail. Because what happens is this. When money talks, guess what happens? That way they move. But you can talk with your money. You say, Doc, I don't have the money to be able to fight against Monsanto. Yes, you do. You're a consumer. And if you share this knowledge, if you share this video, and people now choose to buy from an organic farmer, if a person chooses to actually go to the grocery store and only go on the perimeter and not buy all the GMO stuff in the middle, do you understand that the majority of stuff at health food stores, or excuse me, at stores is GMO? The majority of stuff that you can buy at the grocery store, Festival, Woodman's, anywhere, Guess what happens? It doesn't matter what store you're at. I don't care if you're a family-owned store. I don't care if you own the store forever. Guess what happens? The majority of products you have are detrimental to your life. They have chemicals in there that are shown to actually sometimes cause even neurological damage. And we think it's okay in moderation. Our body doesn't know. Your blood-brain barrier doesn't know moderation of AMPA. It says, wow, I'm being damaged. Doesn't know moderation. A little bit or more, it's just more damage. Is that what you want for your kids? Please do me a favor. Answer me in the questions below, in the comments below. Is that what you want for your children? Is that what you want for your grandchildren? Is that what you want for yourself? See, my video today actually has nothing to do with more than you get to choose. Put your money where your mouth is. I promise you I will. I promise you that I will do everything I can to bring you the greatest information from a very simplistic way to connect with you, so then you can actually have your own copies to discuss people, but you have to be strong enough. Remember, this holiday, the majority of your family is going to have crappy GMO toxic food out there. Are you going to eat it or not? Are you going to say that you want to actually run with the crowd because you don't want to make grandma, mom, or dad, or anybody upset? Or are you stand for what's right? Because once again, if you don't do it, who? I'll do it. I'll do it. Think I'm joking? I can honestly tell you, my wife and I have stories where our family made fun of us. My nephew Brandon right here shaking his head. Some of them still do. It's okay. I get it. I'm there with you. I'll still love them from a distance. You know, it's true. I know, trust me. I don't know if I ever told you guys, some of you guys may be new to the page, but you know, when I proposed to my wife, I got down on one knee. I told her this. This is not a joke. You can ask her, you can Facebook her and ask her if this is 100% true. But actually, I went down on one knee and I said, listen, being married to me will be one of the most difficult things you ever do, because the ideas I have actually will cause you to lose friendships, will cause family members to separate from you, will actually cause heartache from just some simple concepts of doing what is right. And thank God she said yes. But I'm telling you right now, the stuff I give you, plain and simple, it makes a lot of sense. But guess what happens? Doesn't mean there's always a good outcome. And I want you guys to be prepared for that. It's my job. I'm there to prepare my daughters for life. I'm there to prepare my team in the big company that we are becoming for what is out there. I'm preparing you guys to have the resources to be able to stand up and say, let my voice be your voice. Because once again, I know that you're not in it for the income, you're in it for the outcome. And that's why we need to stop listening to people and start learning, so now we can change their thinking, which changes their actions. So my discussion on GMOs today, this was my thought process of why I don't eat them, and why at the Wellness Way clinics will always say, listen, do not put these into your body. It's not good. So therefore, from that standpoint, my name is Dr. Patrick Flynn. You guys have a beautiful Saturday, and thank you so much today for watching A Different Perspective. Hey, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single video or live stream. Also, share this video with a friend. Once again, thank you for watching.